What's up, my wizards? It's Dev, Mtg. We like it a magic, and you know, if I'm this happy to start a video out, it's probably spoiler season. And it is that, it turns out. We have got a lot of Core 2021 spoilers to peep today, and a lot of them look really good. This set looks hype on day one to me, and that's the kind of thing I try as hard as I can to refrain from saying on day one of previous seasons, but we've only seen like 4 or 5% of this set, and it already looks like amazing. And I kind of can't wait to get my hands on just some of these reprints, but we've got a lot, so much to discuss. So let's go ahead and get the hype train rolling out the station. Shoot, I'm not going to do that. Let's just look at some cards. Now, if you're a veteran of the channel, you know how I like to pace these videos. Start off with some draft commons, probably won't see much standard play, then build the suspense by working our way into better and better cards. But honestly, there just really weren't that many draft commons that won't see much standard play in this big dump of previews that we got this morning. But we did get to see some stuff like Teferi's Protege and Mayhem Jester. Mayhem Jester is effectively a Mayhem Devil that cost far more, and also doesn't work when your opponent sacrifices stuff. It does get higher stats, and that's good. It might be an addition to the Mayhem Devil decks, but I highly doubt it. 5 mana is way too much. It might just replace Mayhem Devil when it rotates, but it won't be a very good replacement, right? If there's a lot of sacrifice synergies in draft, maybe it's a really good draft piece. We'll have to wait and see about that. But Teferi's Protege is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard that loots. You can pay 1 and a blue and tap it to draw and then discard a card. Again, this is mostly just going to be playable in the limited environment where it's actually not a bad creature at all, but it doesn't go any farther past that. Now, in the uncommon slot, we got a couple of reprints that I'm pretty excited about, like Tormod's Crypt and Quirion Dryad. I really like Quirion Dryad, and it's an uncommon. I don't know if it's ever been an uncommon before. I might be wrong about that, but usually this card is a rare. This is a card that I've got a lot of really, really good experiences with. I've played Quirion Dryad decks a lot during my time as a Magic player. I'm going to keep doing it again now that this card is available to play in Standard. I love creatures like this that grow, and I think it might be a kind of a decent card finally again in Standard. Last time this was printed, it wasn't a great Standard card, but now we've got all kinds of 1 mana protective spells that aren't green, by the way. You got a lot of white protective spells that just cost 1 mana that grow your Dryad and keep it alive. So I think it might actually be fun to play Quirion Dryad again, and I'm going to try to because I try to play it every time it's Standard playable. But as far as Tormod's Crypt, this is a cool little reprint uncommon. This looks very much playable as a sideboard card in Standard to just dumpster all of the graveyard strategies. I mean, Lurrus already just got nerfed, but this would nerf Lurrus further just by taking everything out of their yard. Same thing with the scape stuff like Euro, Croxa, all that. This does really well against, you know, obviously wipes their graveyard so they can't get like planeswalkers and creatures out with an Elspeth Conquers Death. There's all kinds of cool things that Tormod's Crypt could do, and it is just pretty much like one of the best graveyard hate pieces of all time. I guess that's all I've got for Tormod's Crypt. So I'll move on to some other uncommons here that I am very, very excited about, but I nonetheless don't think make like the main cut for amazing cards that we saw today, which is crazy because both these cards are good. We get to see Fierce Empath, which is 2 and a green for a 1/1 elf, and when it ETBs, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 6 or greater, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your library. That's good. That's really fantastic. Go get an Enrace Forerunners, or really anything that you're looking for in either a ramp deck or maybe just like a combo deck that's based around a really, really large creature. But another uncommon that I'm really excited about is Indulging Patrician. Patricia! This is 3 mana, 1 and a white and a black for a 1/4 Vampire Noble with flying and lifelink. And at the beginning of your end step, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, each opponent loses 3 life. That is really, really cool, you know, especially in these black-white life gain decks that probably won't be much of a thing after rotation in the fall. Remember, I've already seen some people confused about this, have to say it every time a core set comes out. No rotation happens until fall. You can play Core 20 and Core 2021 in the same Standard together for a few months, just so we're clear. But in any case, back to what I was saying, black-white life gain decks might like this, although there's already probably a bunch of 3-drops they'd rather play, honestly. I could actually really see, you know, at least a 2 of, if not a full 4 of this card in those decks, but I don't think it propels those decks to the forefront of Standard or anything. But I do think that it's an interesting piece for them that survives all kinds of removal and blocks really well for what that's worth, and it's kind of worth a lot. But as much as I like that card, my pick for uncommon of the day is Teferi's Tutelage. Oh my god, 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an enchantment. When it ETBs, you draw a card, and then you discard a card. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent mills 2 cards. Now, first of all, you may notice that they have codified milling. It is now actually called that on the card. They don't have to waste a bunch of print by saying puts the top whatever cards of their library into their graveyard. That was wasted print for like 25 years. We can finally just say mill. We all know what it means. They put reminder text on there, whatever, but we know what mill means. I'm just glad that it's actually a term now. Magic players have been using it forever, so it makes sense to actually make it a thing. So I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited that they printed what is apparently just mostly a better Jace's Erasure. Jace's Erasure costs 1 less mana, which is a huge deal, but this actually affects the game state. The turn that it enters the battlefield, goes ahead, draws you a card, discards a card. If you're digging for something specific, that's good. If you're trying to dump stuff into your graveyard for whatever reason, that's good. So I really like the added ETB on here, and I think that it's probably worth the extra mana, but I've always liked Jace's Erasure. I just advocated for reprinting Jace's Erasure not long ago, so I'm super glad that we actually have this card. But let's move on to some rares and mythics. That's right, we finally made it to this part of the video, and I'll start with some more reprints. Just a lot of really cool reprints today. Like Azusa Lost But Seeking. Holy crap, this card. As well as Grim Tutor. So the rumors about Grim Tutor were 100% true, and honestly, I've come around on this. It's probably not like that good in standard. I mean, go get whatever card you want is always going to be very, very powerful. It is, but really you're just taking a mana off of Diabolic Tutor and tacking 3 life onto it. I don't think this card is like unplayable or anything. I think that certain combo decks will very likely want this card. Decks with a very desirable 4-drop will very likely want to play this card in some cases, but not in all. I'm not convinced that this card sees all the standard play in the world. It's just a very needed reprint with very cool art. But back to Azusa, I actually didn't say much about this card. By design, I'm not actually sure either how well this does in standard, to be honest. You need the lands to play once Azusa's on the battlefield, and we've had stuff like this, Wayward Swordtooth. We've also had Dryad of the Elysian Grove, a card that's seen so little play I had to pause between takes there and take 10 seconds to remember the name of the card. That's how little play Dryad's actually seen. Now this does give you 2 cards. 2 lands per turn rather than just the 1, but it's hard enough to play 1 extra land when you have your Dryad out. That said, this does look pretty decent with stuff like Experimental Frenzy and Bolus's Citadel, stuff that lets you play cards off the top of your library. That looks like a great combo. This on turn 3, Experimental Frenzy on turn 4, start going off the turn after that, but that might be slightly too slow. It's entirely possible that's too slow for the upcoming standards. So I will say this is scary with a couple of things we have access to right now, but I'm actually not as scared of it as I would have thought I would be. But that's not it for reprints, y'all. Not even close, because we also got to see Runed Halo, Containment Priest, and Bane Slayer Angel. What? Ridiculous. What a ridiculous crop of cards right here, everybody. Runed Halo is pretty sweet. You can always protect yourself from an expansion explosion. If you're playing against Team of Reclamation, you can protect yourself from a Zenith Flare. Against Cycling, that's good. It's a really good sideboard card right here. People have also said you can protect yourself from a Command the Dread Horde, the same way that like a Wanderer would, prevent all the damage to you from that effect. I don't think that's probably not good enough, but at the very least, you get Runed Halo to protect you from really important kill spells in the standard environment, and that's what we wanted. Aside from that, though, the other reprints are kind of a little bit more hype in some ways, like Baneslayer. I will say that this gets like completely destroyed in combat by like a Cavalier of Thorns. We've got some checks and balances on Baneslayer in the format. I'm not sure how great this card actually is. It is just a super hype reprint. It's awesome to see Baneslayer for the first time in like a decade, like a literal decade. Baneslayer's making its return after so long, and I like to see her. I'm not sure how good Baneslayer actually really is in competitive Magic 10 years after the fact, but I guess we're going to find out. As far as Containment Priest goes, this one is the one I waited the longest to talk about for a reason. Containment Priest is freaking ridiculous. It's so good. Containment Priest is just 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 human cleric with flash. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. That's right. I read this one because this is the one that people are not knowing for some reason is a reprint. I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, this is a really good new card. It's not new. Containment Priest is quite the old card. And it does work against a lot of cool stuff. It would have worked a lot against companions if they hadn't just nerfed the companion mechanic. So there's that. I guess we couldn't wait an extra couple of weeks for Containment Priest to come out. But obviously this wouldn't stop the companion mechanic all by itself. But it would be another sort of Dranith Magistrate against those decks. It would also work pretty well against Agent of Treachery because a lot of people don't cast Agent of Treachery. And once Agent of Treachery is on the battlefield, it blinked. And if your opponent's blinking stuff, then it just gets exiled. So that's pretty cool. You know, this works pretty well against cards like Thassa because, if they go to blink something, it's gone forever. Remember that once you have a priest out, you can blink your opponent's creatures, and they're gone forever. There's just so many really cool things you can do with a Containment Priest. I'm excited to sort of see what all the different wrinkles for this card are in Standard. But there's one more reprint today. It's not really a big deal. It's just Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Oh my god. It reprinted this card, everybody. This card has actually been in Standard in the time that I've had a YouTube channel. It doesn't feel like that, but this card was like in Standard when we started the YouTube channel. So, yeah, it feels like we just lost Ugin, and it's already back. In case you weren't around for the first go, this is a really good Magic card. Like, it's so good. It costs 8 mana, which seems like a lot, but we've got so much ramp. We've got Nissa in this format, plus things like, Euro, Growth Spiral. I mean, just a million ways to ramp. Our ramp is very, very effective in Standard, if you hadn't noticed. So, I don't think it'll be too hard to get Ugin down. And that makes these, like, Bant ramp decks a million times better than I thought they were going to be. And I already thought, in case you hadn't heard me say this, because I've said it a few times, I've already thought Bant Ramp was probably going to be the best deck in the format. But now that you've got all the ramp you could ever need, plus Nissa, plus, Teferi and a bunch of other answers, Shatter the Sky and whatnot, and this all the way on the top of your curve to cast with your Nissas and Growth Spirals and whatnot, I just think that deck is, like, really in a very, very good position because it's likely one of the best shells for this card. And this card is good. I'll say it one more time in case you haven't experienced this card before. This card is ridiculous. But let's go ahead and get into the brand new stuff here, starting with Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 1/3 legendary vampire cleric. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. You can pay 3 and 2 black to have creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. I'm not kidding you. The moment that I saw this card for the first time, Golden Ticket started playing in my head, and I don't know why this card made me that, like, unabashedly happy. I have had so much fun in the past with, like, Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood, and this is just those cards on a stick. You can't have extra copies of it in play or anything, but it's still going to be so much fun. So much fun. So much fun. Earlier I was saying that that Orzhov Uncommon that deals 3 damage whenever you've gained 3 life in a turn, I was saying that's probably going to see play in the black-white life gain decks as, sort of a replacement for 3 drops you cannot play in those decks, like Linden. This probably takes the cake over that card. If anything, some of the stuff we're seeing today just makes me think that black-white life gain is going to have support past the fall rotation, because stuff like this is just nuts. But even in before rotation, we've got all the life gain stuff that we have, but probably the most notable is Sorin. If you got a Sorin on turn 4 right after you play this card, you don't have to pay the 5 mana to give all your stuff lifelink. Just stuff already has lifelink. Also, this makes it to where your Sorin does 2 damage on ping, so that's pretty sweet. But I just love this thing. Cards like it have cost so much to get down in the past. This, on the other hand, only costs 3 mana. And it's got, like, at least a decent toughness. They can't, like, shock it to death or something, and that's really important. I just really, do I like this thing? Do I like this thing? And it turns a bunch of, like, useless life gain effects into direct damage. Heliod's Intervention suddenly does a whole bunch of damage. But, lifelink creatures get a million times better. It's just, Lord, is it good. It's so good. I like this card. I'm not actually sure that this is going to see, like, top table standard play. I don't think it's meant for, like, real competitive Magic, but it's not going to stop me. Let's move on to a callback to a card that they didn't reprint the card, but they at least called back to it. Here's a Masticore, everyone. Spark Hunter Masticore, to be exact. This is 3 mana for an artifact creature, and it's got a 3/4 stat line. As an additional cost to cast it, you discard a card. This card has protection from Planeswalkers. You can pay 1 to have it deal a damage to target Planeswalker, and you can pay 3 to have it gain indestructible until end of turn. This card is actually very good. I'm fairly certain this card is insanely good. First of all, you can turn that frown upside down pretty easily, right? That downside can become an upside in a deck that's looking to reanimate stuff or just play in its graveyard in any way, right? It's a not embarrassing body for 3 mana. 3 mana for a 3/4 is pretty good. Survives Deafening Clarion, survives Skewer the Critics, survives a lot. In this upcoming format, can be really decent against the aggro decks in terms of, again, just a body. I mean, you're basically looking at a Thrashing Brontodon that any color can play. Again, in terms of mana cost for the body that you're getting. And 3 mana for a 3/4 is proven to be pretty decent, but that's obviously not the attractive part of the card. First of all, protection from Planeswalkers is insane. That means, most importantly, maybe in this format, it can't be hit by a Teferi. This just does a lot. Just like Masticore's, it does a lot on open mana, or at least the original Masticore. But yeah, if you can't tell, I'm kind of more hyped about this card than I probably should be. I think, if anything, it's just very likely a standard sideboard staple. Although I'm not sure how good it's going to be in the main deck. And if you personally hate Planeswalkers, as I know so many people do, you probably wanted a card like this. Congratulations. But next we got to look at Peer into the Abyss. This is 7 mana, 4 and 3 black for a sorcery. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. This just looks like a fun card to me. I'm not actually sure this sees any play whatsoever, or it could see all the play. All of the play. It's possible, right? If you've got a way to cheat on this card's mana cost in some way or another and cast it. Especially cast like copies of it. Can you imagine? Because, you know, like, you won't just immediately die. You'll lose half your life, then you'll lose half of that. And draw the half of your library. It's like casting Demi in Final Fantasy. You never die to it, but you'll do a lot of damage. And this card's kind of like that, right? You're going to hurt yourself a good bit, but you'll also draw enough cards to potentially win the game if you've got more mana to use that turn. That's another problem with this card, is that 7 mana makes it to where, like, yeah, you probably draw, like, all the cards that you need, but can you use them? Do you have the time to use them? You just hit yourself for half your life total. So it's entirely possible you just say go and your opponent runs you over with whatever creatures they have out. But of course I got to talk about the hidden mode on it. This says target player. So if you're trying to mill your opponent out, you can make them draw half their library. Although again, you need to kill them very soon after you do that. Or you can just make them lose half their life total. Which again is good. You can just flip the situation I just outlined on its head, where you make them lose half their life and then you swing in with all your guys for the kill. But I don't think that's going to happen like super often. I think that decks that want to play this card are probably going to play it so they can draw half of their own library. I mean, why would I do all the work to cast this card and then let you draw cards? I want to draw the cards. But let's move on to Teferi's Ageless Insight right here. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for a legendary enchantment. If you would draw a card, except for the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, you draw 2 cards instead. This card looks filthy to me. I really haven't seen too many people talk much about it, because it's a 4 mana do-nothing enchantment, as they say, but I don't think this necessarily does nothing. Even on turn 4, right? The turn that you cast it, this could do stuff if you have Planeswalkers, for instance, that draw you cards. But let's say you do play it on turn 4 and don't do anything. Well, if you get a turn 5, suddenly it does everything. You know, Chemist's Insight will draw you 4 cards, you know? Like anything, like Thirst for Meaning will suddenly draw you 6 cards, and that's ridiculous. It's so freaking good. You know, Expansion Explosion. Imagine how many cards you could draw off an Expansion Explosion with this thing sitting on the table. And by the way, those decks could play a copy or 2 of this card, because you play Wilderness Reclamation in those decks. So you play Wilderness Reclamation turn 4, untap. On your turn 5, you can play this card on your main phase and still have your shields and all your mana up when your opponent goes, so you really don't feel like you lost much value playing this card. I can see this going in a couple of decks in Standard right now, and I'm telling you, once it's on the table, I bet the value generated by this is just freaking absurd. But let's do it, y'all. Let's finally look at Pack Leader. I know you want to. It's 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 dog. And other dogs you control get +1/+1, just so you know. Hounds, the creature type Hound, has been errated to be dog. Whenever Pack Leader attacks, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn to dogs you control. Here's the thing, including itself. That's good. Like, just a bear, I know it's a dog, but you know what I mean, a bear. A 2 mana 2/2 that can attack and have like a form of indestructible is really, that's good, even if it doesn't give it to any other dogs. That's actually not bad in and of itself. But, you know, if you are playing other dogs, this being a 2 mana Anthem effect that effectively gives them a form of indestructible as well, it's just unbelievable. That is a really, really good tribal lord for a tribe that needed some support, obviously, and I'm sure we all wanted some support. I mean, this is obviously a good boy. That's everyone's joke. That's everyone's joke. It's like, oh, he's a good boy. So I guess if everyone else is going to do it, I'm going to do it, right? But that's not a good reason to do anything, just so you know. Matter of fact, might as well go ahead and look at Cat Dog right now. This is Rin and Seri, Inseparable. 4 mana, 1 in Naya colors for a legendary dog cat. They could have put Cat Dog. It wouldn't have been alphabetical, but they could have actually put Cat Dog right there. And no space in between it, just Cat Dog. But anyway, it's a 4/4, and whenever you cast a dog spell, you get a 1/1 green cat. Whenever you cast a cat spell, you get a 1/1 white dog. And you can pay red, green, and white and tap Rin and Seri, and it deals damage to any target equal to the number of dogs you control, and you gain life equal to the number of cats you control. How can you not? If you don't like this, if you're not excited to play a cat plus dog deck, then like, I really don't know that I can make you a happier person. I you know, I do my best to spread love and joy on this channel, but if you're cynical about this card's existence, then like, you gotta lighten up, man. You really do. How could you not like that this card exists? But let's go back to yesterday to pick up a couple of rares that we didn't talk about. Here's Double Vision to start off. This is 3 and 2 red for an enchantment. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now, a lot of people have been saying that Thousand Year Storm is better than this. I think this might be better than Thousand Year Storm, to be honest, but Thousand Year Storm didn't see much play. This does cost a whole mana less, and you don't have to cast more spells before you get to start copying things. So I think this is probably just better than TYS. But again, TYS wasn't the most played thing in the world. If anything, I think this will probably follow in the footsteps of Thousand Year Storm as being like a brewer jank lord kind of card that YouTubers play with and love a lot. You know, like jank brewers just can't get enough of, but it probably doesn't really break through into the higher tiers of Standard. But this is where we're going to start talking about cards that do break into the higher tiers of competitive viability, starting with Mangara, the Diplomat. Mangara is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 2/4 legendary human cleric with lifelink, and whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, draw a card. And whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. And I think it's really interesting card design, and a really interesting way to get card draw into white, and it still kind of fit the color pie. So I really like everything they did with this. I'm mostly talking about it in terms of Commander, but obviously this could be a really sweet Standard card as well. 4 mana is a little bit much, let's be honest. 4 mana is a little bit much, but there are going to be plenty of decks this works really, really well against. If you're playing against aggro, this brick walls them with a 2/4 lifelink. That's going to be really tough for them to get past. And even if they can, you know, get a profitable attack step in, you'll very likely draw that card. So it just seems good to me. It seems good to me. And if you're playing against like a combo deck or even control decks that often want a double spell on their turns, then this looks fantastic as well. This is probably going to get you, you know, a number of cards over the course of a game of Standard if it stays in play. That's exactly the kind of thing White wanted. I just kind of like everything about this card, and it's probably going to see some amount of competitive play, but even if it doesn't, it's going to see Commander play in every single White Commander deck until the end of time. I've actually saved an uncommon for this portion of the video, and it's Plunge. Now, I've seen this translated 3 different ways, but the Mythic Spoiler translation right now is Plunge. That's what I'm going with. That will probably change, so just keep that in mind, rough translation. But the card is what I'm worried about. 1 and a black for an instant. Destroy target planeswalker or creature with converted mana cost less than or equal to 3. Alright, so this is even better than Heartless Act, and I kind of freaked out about Heartless Act, if you remember. I will say that I don't know what the split's going to be, because you don't just play 4 of this, 4 Heartless Act, 4 Murderous Rider. You know, you gotta kind of pace your removal a little bit better than that. So I'm interested to see what the splits are going to be in the varying control decks that are going to play cards like this. But I do think the card definitely sees play. You know, it busts up 3 fairies. Can't do that at instant speed, which is kind of lame. It's a little awkward because it looks like it was in some ways designed to kill Teferi, but it can't use its instant speed to do that. A little bit of a bummer, but it can still do it. The spread of playability on this is amazing. Note, by the way this is worded right now looks a little bit rough. I think some people would be confused into thinking this can kill any planeswalker and also any creature CMC 3 or less. No, you can kill things CMC 3 or less. Whether it's a creature or a planeswalker, has to be converted mana cost 3 or less. Keep that in mind. But that still gives us a huge spread of options, all at instant speed, so it's going to see some amount of play until long after we're all dead. But let's move on to Chromatic Orrery right here. I've always hated the word orrery. It's difficult to say for me. But anyway, 7 mana, that's a lot. For a legendary artifact, you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. And you can tap this for 5 colorless, but remember, that's any color mana. And you can pay 5 and tap it to draw a card for each color among permanents you control. Godlike commander staple, if nothing else. This is going to see commander play. Again, until long after we're all dead. I imagine this is going to be a commander all-star. But this is probably playable in standard too. Again, we've got all of the ramp in the entire world, and if it's not too hard to get to 8 mana for Ugin, it's not too hard to get to 7. Some standard decks can get to 7 mana on turn 4. Or more than that even, you know. There's a lot of standard decks that play like Gilded Goose 1, Paradise Druid 2, Lull Nissa on 3, and if you keep your Nissa out, then on turn 4 you can easily cast this, have mana left over, oh, and by the way, tap it for mana as well. That's the cool thing about this, is once you get it on the table, it effectively only costs 2 mana to actually cast the card, because you immediately tap it for 5 of whatever color mana you freaking want, you know. Cast this with some ramp earlier on in the game and immediately tap it to cast a Niv Mizzet. Seems very, very good to me. And I think people are kind of underselling this card because of the ridiculous casting cost, but it's been proven that 7 actually isn't that ridiculous of a casting cost in the current standards. So I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the way that this is going to see all the commander play in the world, but do not be surprised if this sees a ridiculous amount of standard play as well. It's a very powerful card. But the last couple of cards I want to look at today are Planeswalkers, starting with Liliana, Waker of the Dead. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 black for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. You can +1 Lily to have each player discard a card. Each opponent who can't loses 3 life. Alright. You can -3 Lily to have target creature get -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. Okay, and you can -7 Lily to get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat in your turn, put a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. First of all, Ultimate is nuts. Ultimate is so good. Creature card from any graveyard, a graveyard, and you've been making your opponent discard cards this whole time? Yeah, Ultimate is good. But, you know, Planeswalkers are never judged on their ultimate. And I said it before you got a chance to comment it. Actually, you probably already commented it, but yes, I know. I've been playing Magic for 25 years. You can't judge a Planeswalker on its ultimate. And that much is true, but that is, I mean, I can also mention that the ultimate is good. I can do that, right? You'll allow me that? But anyway, a lot of people have been comparing this to Liliana of the Veil, and it's just not. I mean, an extra mana means so much. It means so freaking much. Usually, what makes a Planeswalker for me is its removal ability. If it doesn't have a removal ability, I almost instantly don't like a Planeswalker, but this one does. The only problem is how conditional it actually is. It looks very, very good in the late game, and that's good, but a lot about this Planeswalker looks good in the late game. I'm not sure how much I really want to drop this on turn 4, but it's probably better than a lot of things you'd be doing on turn 4, honestly. But if you drop it, you know, on turn 9, you know, you top deck it later in the game. Your opponent doesn't have any cards in their hand. It's effectively remove whatever you want, which is good, or deal your opponent 3 damage a turn, which is also good. So this is the kind of Planeswalker that I like in the late game, can possibly even finish games for mid-range decks, but doesn't actually look amazing on turn 4. But our final Planeswalker today, but not our last card, I'm going to go ahead and tease that for you, is Teferi, Master of Time. He's no longer a Time Raveler, he is a Master of Time, everybody. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time, on any player's turn. Anytime you can cast an instant. You freaking kidding? You can +1 Tef to draw a card, then discard a card. You can -3 Teferi, and have target creature you don't control phase out. More on that in a second. You can also -10 Teferi to take 2 extra turns after this one. Whew, ultimate is ridiculous. Yeah, I'm talking about the ultimate again. I'm doing that just to make you upset, commenter. But anyway, in case you haven't figured it out yet, the ultimate is actually not too hard to get to, because you get 2 ticks a turn. That's so many ticks you're going to get Lyme disease. Is that the only actual joke in this whole video? I apologize. I'm that excited about cards. I'm hoping that excitement supplants written material in this video. But anyway, Teferi. Teferi gets to tick up on your turn and your opponent's turn, meaning that he ticks up twice as fast as most Planeswalkers. So -10 isn't really as much as you think it is. Let me go ahead and point that out. -10 you can actually get to in just a couple of turn cycles. So being able to tick this up on your opponent's turn is nuts. I'm really, really liking this. I don't know how much Control wants to tap out to play this on turn 4, I'll say that much, but it does protect you, it does draw you cards, it does all the things you want a Control Planeswalker to do, so I imagine this is going to see some amount of play without being entirely busted, but the ability to tick during your opponent's turn might be more busted than we think. Anyway, let's move on to the final card I want to talk about today, and that's Gadrak, the Crown Scourge. The ugliest dragon I've ever seen, by the way. But anyway, this is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 5/4 legendary dragon with flying. It can't attack unless you control 4 or more artifacts. But here's the deal. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. So, yeah, why did I save this card till the end? I actually think it's busted. I really think this card might be one of the most dangerous cards of the day. I know that sounds weird, right? But think of all the things you could actually do with this. Just with your own creatures dying. I mean, you can kill your opponent's creatures, by the way, and get treasure tokens that way, which is really fantastic. I mean, the card could pay for itself functionally in just a turn or two by killing your opponent's creatures, but you can also kill your own creatures with aristocrats strategies of some kind. You know, sacrifice a couple of things to Woe Strider, suddenly you got a couple of treasure tokens. If you have Cat plus Oven out, first of all, Oven counts as an artifact towards this thing being able to swing in, so that's good. But every time you sacrifice the cat to the Oven, you get a treasure token. That's good, especially if you have, 2 Witches' Ovens out. And anybody that plays Cat Oven knows that on many occasions you'll have 2 Witches' Ovens out. So if you have 2 Witches' Ovens, sacrifice the cat twice, you immediately have enough artifacts. At the end of turn anyway, to be able to swing in with this. Even when it can't swing, you don't have 4 artifacts, it can still block. So a 3 mana 5/4 flyer is pretty decent. At the very, it's Vantress Gargle is a 2 mana 5/4 flyer that usually can block, but I still think this is good for that reason. Imagine this with Mayhem Devil, right? If you have a Mayhem Devil plus this out, sacrifice a couple of creatures to Woe Strider, get some pings off the Mayhem Devil. Into your turn, you get a couple of treasure tokens. Sacrifice them, get some pings from the Mayhem Devil. It just looks really, really good in so many situations. Oh, and by the way, in case you didn't know, treasure tokens are very good. Like, treasure tokens are very, very, very good. Play this, sacrifice the cat to an Oven. Go ahead and get a treasure token at that end step. And then next turn, you can have 5 mana to play around with. That's a good way to ramp into a Core Vault or something. So there's just a lot you can do with this. I've been blabbering about it now for longer than just about any other card in the video. And obviously the stats are dominant. Turn that you play it on top of everything else. So I really like this card, and I think this kind of mana production could get out of control very quickly in Aristocrats decks, that even if they don't want the mana for anything, and they very often do, let me just throw that out there, Aristocrats decks are quite mana hungry an awful lot of the time, but even if you don't use the treasure tokens for actual mana, just sacking them to get pings off of a Mayhem Devil looks dangerous enough. So I really like this card a lot. I don't know if you can tell. But to the best of my knowledge, that is everything officially spoiled in the last couple of days, except for this island. We got to see this island. That's what lands are going to look like. That looks good. Anyway, that's everything so far. I know this probably took at least half an hour. So thanks for sticking in there. We're going to have more spoilers for you every single day they do previews. I'll be right here on the couch for you, talking about what cards I like best and what you can do with them. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for the notifications for all that good stuff. Like the video if you enjoyed the video. Put it in more recommended feeds. Share it around for some spoiler love. Or hit up the Patreon. $1 a month is all I ask, and you support content like this better than anyone else. Better than Google and YouTube support content like this. You'll be supporting content, so it would really mean a lot to me if you get in there at the Patreon, but I'm not going to shield too hard. Right. Aside from that, I guess go over to TCG Player. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to pre-order any Core Set 2021 stuff. They're the place to do it because they got them cheap prices, boys. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here because I'm probably going to lose my voice. I'm talking so much. But yeah, that's all I got. Just let me know how you felt about everything today. What are your favorite cards? What are some interactions I missed? All that good stuff. And I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.